All right. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to this very, very important conversation. And I'm honored to be here with you that are here live, you that are watching the recording, any of you women that might be watching the recording at different times. Just want to acknowledge and honor you for being here, acknowledge us for being here, and showing up to be together and talk about something that can possibly feel really uncomfortable and disorienting and confusing and, you know, just all of the things that this phase of life can bring about. So, welcome. And I am excited to really come in here and talk about this in a very new way. I am going to pin my video real quick. Yeah, really talk about this in a new way. So, I want to introduce myself first of all for the women that are new in my world. My name's Kadoma, and I am going to be 51 in about a month. And I have been working intimately with my menstrual cycle and my hormones since I was in my early 30s. This part of my life, being a hormonal woman, being someone that was very moved by my hormones, became an important piece for me to look at for my own self understanding in my early 30s. And as I began to learn a lot more about the actuality of the hormones, the biology, what it really does with our bodies, and how it shifts us in our moods, our emotions, our energy levels, our libido, and just the way that we interact with the world and feel the world. As I learned more and more about that for my own self, it became very clear to me that this needed to be something that I taught and educated and mentored around. And have been leading women and holding circles for women and group classes and things like that um, actively for about 5 years. And before that, really practicing it as a sacred navigational system for me in my life and sharing that with my friends. So, really actively working with my body and my hormones, um, like I said, for about 20 years. So, moving into this perimenopausal piece, which I feel like is definitely starting to shift and change within my body and my psyche, most actively within the last probably 3 years. Um, it's become really clear to me that, like, okay, now this is what I need to talk about. Now this is what I need to both practice and embody myself in my own teachings and also talk about with other women. I'm very into talking about taboo subjects, encouraging women to really get real and authentic with their bodies, with cycles, with hormones, but also with our pleasure, with our sexuality. And I mentor women in all of these ways. But this is one aspect that is just starting to become really alive for me in my personal world, and therefore the desire to start to speak about it and teach about it. And it's an interesting piece because, as you know, being in perimenopause, it can feel really messy, right? It can feel really like day to day can feel a little bit more disorienting. The rhythms are really different. Even if you weren't in touch with your cycle before, you can feel underneath your ground that there's symptoms happening all over the place. There's all these different shifts that are happening with our bodies and our minds and our psyches and our identities and all of those things. It's this whirlwind of change. And to choose to step into speaking right now on this as a leader, as a teacher, while simultaneously I feel messy inside, feels like a big deal. And I want it to, I want to reveal to you that in this, it is okay for you to show up in your life as a leader, in your own life, in your experience as a woman, being messy and still trusting that you have some really important things to be and share and activate in your life as a woman. So just sharing that vulnerable piece, because it's like, okay, here I am. This has been something that's been kind of guided as I see how many of you women are like, help, I'm in this. It feels fucking hard and confusing and nobody's talking about it. And I get no feedback from the culture and there's no doctor support. I mean, it's just what I'm seeing in the realm of women in perimenopause right now is a big feeling of just feeling this deep sense of fear and disorientation and being alone in it. And so to be together in this time, to be supportive for one another in this time, and to have an opportunity to speak on it and to show to you that you're not alone and that you're not crazy and that if you're feeling the symptoms and doctors are telling you that it's too early for you to feel symptoms, all of the things, right? That you're not alone and that this is a place that we can now as women gather together and find our education, find our support, find the things we need, and find a new ground, a new way to relate to this time. So that is really my passion in being here and talking to you, is to reorient a new way for us to be with, experience in ourselves, and look at this time of life. So, perimenopause is this time that our hormones are shifting all over the place. Where they used to be more in a rhythm, the hormones of estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone, where they used to be more in a rhythm with your monthly cycle shifting and changing. Now, those same hormones are coming and going out of the body at different points in time in a very different rhythm. Sometimes, it feels like those things can shift within a day, right? Or day to day, moods can be very different. And I'm not here to talk about the hormonal pieces or to talk about like ways that we can fix, quote unquote, our bodies and make it better. There are a lot of tools around that, but that's not really why I'm here today. Why I'm here today is really for an opportunity to reorient around this time. So I just want to acknowledge if it is a time that for you that feels really hard and scary and disorienting and all of the things, that it's okay and that you're not alone in that feeling. And as my own shifting tides are beginning to feel more difficult, what keeps coming for me is the phrase, we can do hard things. And I think so often when things are hard, we have this drive to fix it. Of course, we want to feel better, right? As humans, we desire to feel good. So when things get challenging, there's a deep fear, there's a panic, there's a sense of, oh shit, I need to fix this. And there's a power in being able to find the things that can support us. And there's also a power in being able to see this window of time for you as a woman as an initiation into the next phase of being woman. And that's the reorientation piece that I feel like I want to emphasize. We've been through so many hormone changes already as women, right? We've been through adolescence, shifting and changing and growing breasts and hips and moving into getting our period and thinking about the chaos, the hormonal chaos of that time, right? And then we go through our bleeding years, we have our children, so much hormone changing all of the time. And then there's this phase. And culturally, this phase has been another piece of our culture as women that's been shunned, that's been shamed, that honestly doctors are not being trained on in any way, and they don't really know anything about it. Most doctors, right? So we go and we try to communicate something to a doctor, and they say that it's too early for you to have those symptoms. They doubt you, again being placed in a relationship with um, someone that supposed to have the information that's telling you to doubt your body. So this perimenopausal window that we're in is a powerful place as a woman that we get to reclaim, even if it's uncomfortable. So when you think of cultures in the past, right, there's these rites of passage that would happen either from, boyhood to manhood or maiden to mother or maiden getting your period. Mhm. Um, and these recognized passages of time that are challenging, but the challenge is recognized as a portal, as a passage to another time, to another experience of being a human that is then prepared to walk in a different way. And I really am here to speak on perimenopause as another one of these portals, these passageways to our power as women. So, yes, it can feel really hard. Yes, it's challenging. Yes, it's scary. And we can do hard things. And this is like in a preparation, this preparation for you to graduate in a sense to the point in time where then you are menopausal, you stop your period, and you have this whole second half of the book as a woman without this hormonal chaos, right? Without the cycles, without the possibility of creating a child. It's not the end. And our culture has basically said, we have the culture has this attachment to youth, the attachment to the young woman, to the maiden, to that body type, to that sexuality, to, that innocence. When really, when we hit this point in our lives and we go through this passageway, it is an opportunity for us to fine tune our sense of power as a woman. And that can be very threatening. And I think that's one of the reasons why this part of our life is shamed and shut down. A woman that knows what she wants, a woman that holds boundaries, a woman that's powerful and strong, self contained, not going to give herself away in the same ways. That is not a controllable woman, right? That is a wild, grounded, fierce, confident woman. And this perimenopausal phase, I feel, is a preparation phase that's morphing us almost like a chrysalis, almost like going into another chrysalis of metamorphosis and shaping. us with all these different hard things, like forging in a fire, for us to be in it and ground more and more into our own empowerment, into our own body, into our own self acceptance, our own self love. It's a challenge for self loving a lot of the times during this period. There's a lot of weird stuff that's going on with the body, right? I think I've gained about 20 pounds quite quickly, feeling myself, my body not be as strong, really having to give it a lot more attention. And that's just the physical parts, right? My libido changing. There's so many physical pieces to it. And it's all this opportunity, self love, self acceptance. I'm still beautiful. I still love myself. I'm still worthy. I still belong here. So many pieces to this as being an initiation. It's like we're in this midlife window, right? And we're just getting started in this midlife. We've had this whole build up to this point in time. And now there's going to be this whole second half of life. And you have an opportunity to really reorient yourself into a place of this being a time of inviting you deeper into your own power. And a lot of you might just be feeling like, fuck off. That is not what's happening for me because it's hard. And I acknowledge this time can be really hard. But I also acknowledge that when we come together and we talk about it and we share about it and we talk about what our challenges are and share our resources and learn to see this as a different thing, that it can be a place where we're not just feeling like a victim to our bodies. It can be a place where we can work in partnership with our bodies and with other women to land in this in a different way. So, a couple of pieces that I really want to speak to during this workshop is the grieving aspect, the descent, the going into the underworld that this time can bring forward, and some archetypes that I have identified that are a part of this time that can allow a grounding into something. Like this time can feel really ungrounding. It's hard to feel oriented when everything feels like it's changing and shifting under your feet all of the time. But I have found these archetypes to be a place to really allow the grounding into a part of yourself, a part of your psyche. So I'll speak on that as well. So, firstly, I just want to acknowledge that there is a grieving element that I think is important for us to really see in this time. We can feel angry at our bodies. We can feel resentful of our bodies. We can feel like it's a place that we have no control, like it's happening to us and we have no control with it. And same with our minds, same with our psyches, right? If we're experiencing um, all of the symptoms along with the psychological piece to this whole thing, you know, I think It's a time of a midlife review. It's a time of looking at our lives and saying, what am I doing here? What's important to me now? Like this mark in the sand where you get to really like go into side and find out what has heart and meaning and what is not something I want anymore. And I think psychologically we are being provoked to do that right now. The existential piece of what am I doing here? What have I done? Where am I going? I think is a big part of this time also that's not really spoken about. And that can be scary and disorienting, right? But the grieving piece, I think, allows again this sense of grounding. Like, okay, all of these things are changing about me, about my body, about what's important to me, and being able to really acknowledge those things inside of yourself and the pain and the fear and the panic and the hurt that comes along with losing aspects of who you were. And when you can acknowledge that piece, like these, making a list, a living list of sitting with yourself and saying, what are the things about this time that I'm afraid I am losing? What are the things about this time that feel scary? And really acknowledging those through a living list and saying to yourself, like, these are things that I'm actively grieving in my life about me in this phase of change. Then you're in empowered relationship with those things. You get to sit with them and give thanks for what they brought you in the past and grieve. And in that act of grieving and letting go, you then have the opportunity to reweave and welcome in the things that are going to be shifted as you move into the second half of your life. Different things, different qualities about you that you can give thanks for, that you can offer up gratitude for, that maybe you didn't have when you were younger. So I think it's a powerful place that you can stand and look at, what am I grieving? What am I letting go of? And what am I thankful for that is coming? And the thankful for part, that might be more work to really ground into, right? But there are things we're just not taught, that these things are valuable. There's a richness to this process. We become more present with ourselves. We become more wise. We become more aware. We become more grounded when we move into this second half of our life. And even if you're watching this and in your 40s and that just like that time span doesn't make sense, really allowing yourself to dive into these spaces that there is this transition and there's things that you are growing into during this time. I also want to acknowledge the descent of this time period. So we don't have very many models in our culture, right, around going into the shadows, the depth, the descent, sadness, depression. I'm really into, myth and story as a way for us to learn about our psyches. And there's no mythology in our current culture around the power of the descent, the power of going deep down inside. And this is a part of this time as well of perimenopause, right? It brings this descent. It brings up parts of our shadows. It brings up depression for a lot of women. even if you've never had depression before. It brings up that feeling of hopelessness and helplessness. And that again is a part of this rite of passage. How do we be with those feelings? How do we work with those feelings in an empowered way? Even if we're like brought to our knees, aching, how can we still be in relationship with those feelings and not feel like we're just a victim and we have no interaction with them? Empowerment to me doesn't mean that you're like strong and here and like on it all of the time. Empowerment means to me that you're in relationship with what's happening. So in the past, there have been, mythos around the descent, the goddesses, and very one of the early mythos, one of the first myths in writing was about Inanna and the goddess Inanna. And she goes through this descent where she's a queen and she goes through a descent where every layer that she goes deeper down, she loses something. She has to take something off. And this is symbolic, right? So she takes off her golden torques. She takes off her cape. She takes off her crown. Every layer, there is something that she loses. She has to take off to be brought down to the depth, to the very depth where at the bottom of this descent, she has to take her skin off and she is bones. It's the losing of the ego. It's the breaking apart of who she is, who she was, to become, quote unquote, just bones. And the power of that. And then she ascends and she reweaves and she puts herself back together with parts of herself that make her stronger when she comes back up. And that is this time. This is a descent. It's an active descent. And we can work with it or we can fight it. And we probably do both. But the ability to see mythologically this time right now is a window of taking those things off, losing all the things, and really coming face to face with you, who you are now, which is not who you were before. There's identity shifting, massive identity shifting that goes on during this time. And also the descent piece really being, I see this time and a lot of women, it's like deeper shadows, deeper stuff that we haven't worked on in our life comes to the forefront, to be healed, to be felt, to be looked at. Again, I see this as a cleansing, a preparation of the body, of the psyche to step into that wisdom of being in the second half of the book, right? If you've worked on yourself, if you've done therapy, if you've done, self-awareness and all of these things that you work with your wounds, you work with your trauma, right? And there's deeper and deeper layers of that. And I think this time activates those things out of the subconscious even more to be held. And a part of that is you becoming mother to yourself. If you have been a mother to others, that is most likely shifting during this time. Archetypally, it definitely is shifting, where then you are here to then turn that mothering to yourself and be mother to yourself through these woundings, through these hard times, through the descent. You have the opportunity to build that relationship with yourself where then that mothering energy turns inward and you hold all those parts of you that are scared and angry and disoriented. And that's a growth. That's a maturation of woman to turn and become mother to self. And I find that for myself personally, as anxiety starts to come back up in my life, I haven't felt anxiety really for a long time. And recently it's just starting to build up again. And to have that self mothering relationship where I can tell myself it's okay and I've got you, and I can feel that juicy mother energy that we all have as women and turn that into the inside of that little person and that's afraid. It can be very soothing and supportive. So now I want to talk about the archetypes of this time. So in my life, I've worked a lot with archetypes, mythology. I've studied a lot about the goddesses, and it's been a big part of my study in my life. And through working with the cycles, I identified definitely we have these, there's an archetype, there's a goddess that's associated with each week of our cycles. And I've taught on that and tapped into that in myself. And as I move into perimenopause, what I'm seeing is that this week to week cycle that used to be this arc, right? It was this, okay, I'm here, I'm in this week, I know how to feel myself, I know how to care for myself. Now I'm here, my hormones are here. This is how I feel, and this is how I care for myself. Each week in the 4 months, I mean, excuse me, in the 4 weeks. Now that is not, there is no rhythm like that. It's the rhythm is absolutely shifting. Sometimes it can feel day to day. Sometimes it can feel, I'm finding that I actually, my PMS is at like a deeply grounded time for me, where it used to be very, very unsettling. Now it's really grounding, and it's really, my ovulation feels more unsettling because I think there's estrogen dominance, which creates the, insomnia and creates the um, anxiety. So things are switching. So if you've had awareness of your cycle before and you've worked with it, I invite you to really look at how things are shifting in your own cycle. You can continue to track and just feel, well, how am I feeling this way and this way? And how does that feel similar to how I felt in my cycle in the past? So now, as if like my ovulation phase feels more like my PMS phase. So I can know, okay, well, I'm coming up to this ovulation phase. This is how I most likely am going to feel now, where that's not at all what it was like before, right? And you have the opportunity, if you haven't tracked your cycle before, just to really start becoming aware of if there is a rhythm still within your body. And if there's not, these different things can shift and change all over the place during perimenopause. And I think that's one of the pieces that feels unsettling, is that where we used to have a ground, even if we didn't know there was a rhythm, there used to be more of a rhythm. And now that's kind of like just stripped out. And that relationship with time is no longer a part of how you relate with your world. So it can feel really disorienting. So these archetypes that I am now identifying in perimenopause are very similar to the ones that I had in my cycle. They just shift and change in really different ways. And I am seeing them as an opportunity to become in relationship again, become empowered with this time of life and in relationship with these archetypes within myself, even though they may change and come and go within a day, within 5 days, within 2 days. The rhythm's totally different. Multiple ones a day, even. There's this understanding, okay, that's how, that's there's that archetype, and I can ground into that. So the four archetypes that I have been identifying here are the queen, the lover, the wild woman, and the visionary. And these each have a goddess associated with them, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So I just want to speak briefly on these. So, some things you might be feeling right now. So, maybe you feel a whole lot more anger. Maybe you're more irritated. Maybe you're more clear on your boundaries and like, fuck no, I'm not doing that anymore. Even maybe, that used to be okay, but I'm not doing that anymore. Boundaries, clarity inside of like, this is what I want and this is not what I want. And I give less fucks about like creating these boundaries in my life, right? Which to others can look like anger, which to others can feel threatening. That might be a different part of you that you haven't felt and other people haven't seen in you, right? But I see this time as this clarification of boundaries, self identification of like what you really want, clarification of those boundaries, and an opportunity to really start seeing inside. Like I used to be giving this part of myself away as a woman. And I'm not talking only sexually, like can be sexually, energetically, what you said yes to, how much you said yes or no to. And that shifting into more of a clarity of where that decisive line is. And this archetype is the queen. She is very decisive. She knows what she wants. She knows, more order, more clarity. When you think of the queen archetype, she's regal, but she's fierce. There's a ferocity in the queen. And it's very much around these boundaries and um, being able to see and acknowledge and know that these boundaries are important for you right now. It can like the irritation can feel hard. It can feel like I've been a good girl all my life and now I'm not, and that can feel confusing identity wise. But the boundary of what you're willing to give and do and not do may be shifting dramatically, and that is okay. That is a part of your power as you grow into a woman, and this is the archetype of the queen. So when you feel this inside, tap into the queen. The next one is the lover. And this is a big one as our body shape changes, as our libido changes, as our vaginal walls thin, as we get dry, all of the things that can happen around our sexuality, our body image. For so long, this has been like marketed as a time where a woman's sexuality just dies. And first and foremost, I want to encourage you that that is not what needs to happen. There are many ways that we can keep our vaginal walls healthy. We can keep our sexuality alive. We can continue to stoke our pleasure and we are more confident and healed in so many ways as women at this point in time sexually than we were when we were younger. And it's actually sexually a very ripe and powerful time if we allow ourselves to focus on it as a cultivation, the cultivation of our sexual energy, the cultivation of our pleasure, the devotion to bringing more pleasure into our lives. And knowing that just because we're getting older, that's not the end. And I think that's a huge piece, right? You reach an age, you wear granny panties, like your sex is over. It's just done, right? I mean, the word vaginal atrophy is terrifying to me. It's like a word that's just thrown around. I'm like, no fucking way. No. So there are ways that we can continue to keep ourselves flush and plump and turned on in our lives. So there's that aspect of the lover. And then there's also the aspect of the lover again of self love, self loving. This is such a huge point in time to really activate that self love and orient into a place where you're developing your lovership with yourself, being your own lover. And that's intimately, that's emotionally, that's in what you're willing to give to yourself in time, in space, in delicious moments. It matters. Right now in our lives, simplicity is really important, to really allow ourselves to slow down, to be more simple, to be with the power of this time in our lives as we feel like things are falling apart, to be with it in presence. And that asks us to slow down and simplify. And that will also support your nervous system. If you're starting to feel more anxiety, if you're starting to feel more anxious and overwhelmed, it's because your nervous system is going through a lot. So, supporting yourself with more simplicity. And that's an aspect of the lover, giving yourself rest. It's okay to rest. The next archetype is the wild woman. And I feel this one such a part of this time, especially both in like how messy it can feel, right? It can feel so messy in this time. Like everything can just feel disorganized. Brain function is really different. Like we have a very different, like the whole brain fog thing. We're forgetting things. There's, the mental thing, which is very different. So there's can feel like things are just kind of flying apart at the seams, right? And that is the messy part of this. And that's okay. And when I feel that, it's like tapping into the wild woman, like this wild feminine that is beautiful in her chaos, that is vibrant in her, you know, desire to just take off her clothes and roll around in the mud. It's just like utter letting go of convention, of what you're supposed to be, of what you're supposed to do, and really allowing the exploration of yourself in a way that is outside of your box, all the boxes you've had before. And this time invokes that, it provokes that. As the archetype is shaking things up in your life in a way that invites you to explore the wild woman inside. Who is she? What does she desire? What does she want to do? How does she want to play? Who are you without your boxes, without your supposed to's? This is a window in time to explore that. And there'll be time in within this phase where it just all feels wild and crazy. And if we can anchor into the power of the wild woman archetype and know that this is a powerful part of this time is that shaking up. No doubt you will not be the same woman after you go through this phase. And you're not supposed to be. This is a divine design to get you into the next phase of your life as a woman. And the final one is the visionary. And I see this really connected into the power of the descent. When we go deep down into that place where we have to let everything go and we're just in utter release of control, there's a visionary place there. There's a place your body can guide you, your psyche can guide you into what's next, into who you are in a different way, into the visions of what you might want to bring forth in this next phase of your life, and into just being in that space of not being in the mind And I think that's one of the gifts that we receive when, because we're not so much in this linear mental space. And we think that, it can feel disoriented. The brain fog can feel disorienting, but we're just in a liminal space. We can't keep track of as much, but it's visionary. Again, it's the way that we look at it. Are we being frustrated with the fact that we can't keep track of things as well sometimes, or able to embrace that time as a way to relate to life and visions and coming up with thoughts in a different way? There's such a power there. And it's also the existential piece, I think, that can come up for a lot of us around this time. What am I doing? What was my life about? What do I want it to be about? And having that visionary stance where you're not creating it with your mind, you're letting your mind rest and really allowing the patience and simplicity to feel what that might be. And that might be in the void for a long time. And that's okay. You don't have to fill it up right away. You're not meant to. This is a time to give yourself space and know that it's okay and it's safe to be in that void. And you will come back together. It might be the next day. We wake up feeling like, okay, I'm back. Here I am. It might be a few days, but it's safe. And there's a purpose to it. So I really see these archetypes again as a place for you to be able to identify yourself and ground into. You can feel those different parts of yourself and allow them to be a place to ground into within the ever shifting experiences that you're having right now. They can really bring forth and allow a different relationship with how you feel, of what the symptoms are, what's going on for you in your body. There's purpose. Even if it feels hard, there is a purpose to this time. And it is time that we as women embrace that purpose so that we can walk out the other side into these wiser aspects of ourself and be leaders to our lives, show women around us that this is not a time to give up. It's not a time to hide. And I feel like the more that we can gather together and share what's going on in sisterhood and share what's going on with other women and know that we're not alone and that we're not crazy and that even if it's scary that we've got each other, again, the easier this can be. I think for so many of us as women, we suffer in the dark or we just suffer and don't talk about it. This can be a hard time, but it doesn't need to be a time of suffering. It can be a time of community and building and forging who you are. So I know that was a lot, and I have so much I can say about this. And in my beautiful non-linear fashion, I hope it all made sense. um, I really am eager to talk more about all of these things um, and just help and support us as women to really uh, ground into this initiation as descent, as grieving, and as an opportunity to really embrace these four archetypes. So, as I have been working with these and these thoughts in my life in the last 2 or 3 weeks, a group program has emerged from what I'm working with. And I am excited to share it out with you. Um, it's not all formed, but it will be deeply focusing on a group of women, us gathering together on a weekly basis and having a place for support and feedback and resources and just being held in this space, as well as I will be deep diving into each of these things that I just spoke of. So we'll be talking about the grieving and the descent and the four archetypes, one of these topics each week, with journal prompts, with embodiment meditations, and with homework, which is generally focusing more on your self-care and pleasure. Um, and just a time to deepen into this work together. And it's going to be a 6 or 7 week program and all on Zoom. And yeah, I'll be having more information coming out. I don't even have a sales page for it yet. So it's definitely in a pre-sale situation. And that will be $333 USD for 6 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks of this togetherness. There'll also be a message group, so we'll have constant support for one another. So if that's something that you feel moved by or curious about, just private message me if you're watching the recording as well, and I'll get back to you on that. It will be starting most likely in about 3 weeks, beginning of July. Yeah, I think I'm done talking. And Patty, I would love for you to share. One of my friends here who's actually was kind of originally with me when I started doing the cycle work. We did a lot of work together in the cycle work. Is here. So good to see her. And she's been going through perimenopause and she wanted to share some of her, what's been happening for her. So I'm excited. You can just unmute yourself, Lovey.
Thank you, Katoma. That was stunning. Wow. Incredible. Really. And I have recognized that, we have a ceremony to when we have birth and when we have our first moon cycle and when we get married, and there's ceremony when we die. And there isn't a ceremony to mark a transition because it is a long period of time. And this opportunity to work with you and to work in collaboration with other women is an opportunity for us to actually move in ceremony in honor of this journey. So thank you for this offering that's coming up. I'm excited to learn more and to be a part of it. What I wanted to share was I'm 52 and soon to be 53. And January of this year was the first time that my moon cycle just stopped like that. And I went into panic because first I was like, I need to release. I had a sensation I need to release. And then the panic came into my body's changing and I'm like exercising and I'm eating the same. And all of a sudden I was like gaining weight and this big fear and so much was happening. And you spoke of not having a modern day myth or archetype of today. And I would like to share that there actually is one, and it's real. And this helped me a lot with understanding about worthiness. Because a lot of the fear came down to, I'm no longer beautiful, I'm no longer this, etc., etc. Yeah. And it is called the grand entrance. And if anyone has ever been to a grand entrance of First Nation people, it's like a powwow ceremony, but it is grand entrance. And it begins with drumming and like, etc., and chanting going on. And the chief walks forward first. He enters in first, and he's got these massive feathers and all of his regalia and makeup and the whole bit. And he walks in and it's like an awe of this man walking in. And then the warriors come in and they've got their bows and they've got their like dancing and they've got their like rattles on their feet and in their arms, and the warriors are coming through and it's just like, oh, and so much drumming and all this aggrandizement is coming. And then like the young people come through, and like the beautiful maidens coming through, and they're just stunningly beautiful with all their leathers and their beads, and the shebang, and the young warriors coming through, and they're so strong, but they're just so svelte and incredible. And then the little children come through, and they're like the butterflies and the birds, and they're like dancing and moving all around, and there's all this like aggrandizement. And then it is the elder women that walk without any jewels, just their tans and their hides. And they're walking through. And so if I can ask everyone to just for a moment, what do you see when you see these elder women walking through? I see regalness, and I see wisdom, I see peace, I see honoring, I see guidance, I see beauty, so much soft beauty and strength, so strong, so strong. That is where we're working to, right? We are the maiden crones. These crones are the beauty. This is our journey into the underworld, into the depths, to like strip off all of this so that we can one day become this. For us to like, am I worthy? I am so worthy. I've brought so much wisdom to the world, and I've given to my family and to my community, and to actually like anchor that power and beauty and grace that I've brought to this world, and to like begin to like build it up inside of me to embody that. Yes.
Yes.
So beautiful. So it's called the grand entrance. So,
Yes.
so blessings. And yes, there's grief. And that grief is, just like, actually being present with our feelings, right? And then coming to this place of worthiness to be this beautiful, beautiful woman that we are, that our experience has brought us to become.
Yes.
One last thing to bring when you say about mothering ourselves, the one thing that came was that like our grandmothers, like if you have recollection of our grandmothers, and like how like they were soft and they smelled, and like their bodies were different, that they were this thing, like like moving into them. So if you get like a little bit of chub here or whatever, it's just like it's gonna ebb and flow, but that grandmother energy too is also available to us to help us self-love. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
So beautiful. So thank you, Kadoma. Beautiful women. I look forward to an opportunity to be in ceremony for us to honor this together.
I love that story so much. And yes, I love what I saw was the same, and that they're just like not dressed in this like flamboyant, like, look at me, that's the grounded, wise presence, peace, anchored, just
Grace.
woman.
Yes. Yay.
Yes.
Like that's like all the outside being brought like inside, and it shines, and like the amount of respect and
Yes.
beauty for that. It's remarkable.
Yeah, and that's where we're headed. That's where we're
Yoo-hoo!
go.
We're maiden crones.
Maiden crones. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, and I feel that sometimes, right? We, have opportunity to kind of have those moments where I feel that part of myself present and wow, I've been through so much to get to where I am. And now there's this whole window of more forging in the fire
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get to another place.
A big piece for me was about like, am I worthy of being this graceful, regal person? And just asking myself that question and putting it in my heart. My heart was like, yes, Patty, look at you. Right. But like, it was like, it wasn't there. It wasn't instilled in me to feel worthy of myself. So, and that's a piece, that's the shadow piece to working through. Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah, the worthiness to feeling the like acceptance of the wisdom that you've gained through your life, that we gain through our lives, and what we do have to offer if, on the other side, that's not celebrated, right? It's not a piece that we're mirrored back in reflection from our culture. Like it's doomsday over there, right? So to be able to really anchor back in, there's incredible wisdom, there's incredible beauty, there's so much to that time. I love that story as a model for that. Thank you so much. I'm just gonna sit with that for a lot inside. Jenny, is there anything you'd like to share? I know you're sharing in the comments. She's saying, thank you for that perspective. Thank you, Patty, for sharing that. Yeah. Okay. Well, and yes, and I love how you're speaking of this time and this group as a ceremonial space because that is really what I feel like my intention and my desire of this time and space that we would spend together is that it is an honoring of this rite of passage. It is a ceremony of this rite of passage and a way to for you to feel belonging in your body and find safety and find the richness of this transition of time in your life. And in that, you get to face the shadows and face the aspects of self that become worthy and that feel that worthiness of owning this time, owning these parts of your life as a place of power. So, if you're interested in joining me, that would be amazing. And I'm happy to have conversation with you if you would like to talk more about it as well. So feel free to message me. I'll be sharing more in the group um, as well. And thank you for being here with me live. Thanks for your feedback. And thank you, Patty, for sharing. It's just sending so much love to each of you women and just knowing that we got this. We can do hard things, right? And it's creating space inside of us to be more here in a different way. So sending all you sisters love.
Thank you, Kadoma. Bless you.
Bless you, Kathy.